Hello and welcome to the Ivy and the Arch podcast, a Major League Baseball podcast with an emphasis on the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals. My name is Aaron. I'm joined by Caleb as always. This is episode 10. We're almost at the halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. The All-Star break is quickly approaching. The NL and AL All-Star team starters were just released this past week, and the Cubs and the Cardinals finished up a very exciting and entertaining two-game series in London. So we're going to kind of cover a little bit of all that today. We're going to kind of cover some of the preseason predictions that we did, catch up on how well we did thus far, which, spoiler alert, not well. Neither Caleb and I are doing very hot in that department right now. We're going to kind of touch on the London series a little bit, go over trade deadline expectations for both of these teams and baseball as a whole. So it should be a pretty fun episode today. Caleb, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Like you said, there's been a whole lot of stuff this season to catch up on. So many things have gone differently than I think people had expected. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different. You know, as I was going over my notes for today's episode, I pulled up our preseason prediction standings, and I think you and I went very conservative on a lot of our picks and teams that probably a lot of people picked as well in terms of what should have happened and what should. Like, I feel like our preseason predictions are what should have happened at the midseason point so far this year, and it's like polar opposite of anything anybody could have ever expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's been completely looking at them here. It's completely off base
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean, you have some picks that are sticking there, but definitely some of the teams that I had counted out. I can tell you at least two right now are winning their divisions. So
Right.
it's been an interesting season by so far.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a couple minutes here. So let's go ahead and start off with the London series. The Cubs and the Cardinals played a two-game set at in London. It was kind of awesome seeing baseball that early in the day, especially the Sunday game. I think it was like 9 o'clock Central Time that game started. Um, the Cubs won the first one, I believe, 9-1, and then they lost the second one. And I'm pulling up the scores here. I should have had this ready to go. Both games were really entertaining. Not nearly as high scoring as the Red Sox Yankees London series. But Caleb, I'll let you go ahead and start. I didn't catch a whole lot of game one. I had some family stuff going on Saturday, so give me your thoughts on game one. I know the Cubs won it, but what were your thoughts on that first game in the London series?
Yeah, well, what'd you say the final score was? Did you have
I
that pulled
believe it
up
was
for game
9-1.
9-1? And that's it. It definitely felt like the Cardinals were kind of getting robbed the whole time. Even when it was like 2-0, it felt insurmountable for some reason, and that's because they were not touching Justin Steele in any way. They weren't getting anywhere close. I mean, he had a no hitter going into the fifth or sixth, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and even when they did get to him, they were hitting it at double plays and not taking advantage of extra base runners from the Cubs. So that game one just it felt like from the start it was all Cubs. Adam Wainwright had gotten shelled, not in the way you would have expected with the long ball, but it was balls into the gaps and it was infield hits that the Cubs runners were beating out, and it was just basically from I think he got pulled in the third or fourth inning. It never really looked up from there. They did eventually get a hit off Steele, but like you said, it was 9-1. They never did anything more than that. So
Yeah.
that first game was out of reach pretty much the whole time. I know the second game was a little bit more competitive. There was some more back and forth, but the first game was it was definitely all Cubs and led by I think it was Ian Happ. He had two homers.
Yep.
So
Yeah, the game got out of hand pretty quickly within the first four innings. So the Cubs scored two in the second, three in the third, and two in the fourth, and by that point, it was kind of off the rails. The Cardinals ended up getting one in the sixth, and that was their only run of the day. Um, but I mean, yeah, the Justin Steele has continued to show why he's become the ace of the staff in that game. He went 6 innings, 5 hits, only allowed one earned run, and especially impressive for me is that environment in London. It's not a traditional MLB ballpark. They converted a football field for it out there, soccer, and the ballpark dimensions were super shallow. I think dead center was only like 393 or like 400, like low 400s. The corners were like 360, and I think that's how Happ and Swanson both were able to hit at least one of their home runs for those games. So you would expect high offense. And a guy like Justin Steele only really throws two pitches. He's got a sinker and he's got that four seam. Doesn't really throw much else than that. So if the Cardinals hitters were able to pick up on that, either one of those two pitches early on, we should have seen a lot of offense because there's nothing else that he can revert to. But the fact that he's kind of a two pitch starting pitcher and was able to deliver six quality innings with eight strikeouts in that type of offensive environment was pretty impressive, I think. Um, the bullpen really held it down. Merriweather, Fulmer, and Kay for the Cubs each combined for one inning each. Only one hit allowed, two walks, one strikeout. So overall, great performance. And like you were saying, Wainwright, that was kind of another gut punch to this derailment of a season he's had thus far. Um, when was the last time that he pitched? When that story came out about him on the bench and Ali talking to him after the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, just brutal watching it. I mean, you got to put fandoms aside. Adam Wainwright has been nothing but a class act his entire career. Phenomenal, phenomenal pitcher. Your heart just goes out to him watching him struggle like that because he's 2 wins away from 200. So I feel for the guy. I can't imagine what he's going through, and to kind of, especially in that London series game, to kind of just blow that lead super early, or not even have a lead, but just kind of give up the lead that early. He went 3 innings, 11 hits, 7 earned runs, 2 home runs allowed there. Matz came in, did some clean relief work. Jake Woodford had a solid inning and two-thirds, and then Drew Verhagen had a home run allowed in the ninth inning that he pitched there. Um,
I
so
mean, the issue for him is not every start this year has reflected what happened in London and then again this past week against the Astros. But it's just so much louder when the team has struggled so hard.
right,
So the best he can really give you at this point is like 5 or 6 innings and 2 or 3 runs. But when he's going 3 innings and you're looking at a 6 or 7 run deficit, it's extremely tough to continue to tote him back out there.
yeah,
Now, thankfully for him, and not so thankfully for the Cardinals, there's not really a better option. I think Steven Matz is going to put up very similar numbers. So at this point, you may as well continue to run him out there. Um, but I don't know. I mean, last night Dakota Hudson had a really good showing against the um, Yankees. So I guess maybe if you want to give him a look, and I think the most realistic option for Wainwright is to probably injured list him, whether it's real or not. I think I saw that if you injured list him soon, he can miss one start, but then he gets like 2 weeks off because of the timing of the All Star break.
right.
So
A little bit of
as
a
far as
reset.
getting him right, a ton of extra rest, it's probably the best time to give it to him.
I agree.
Um, but again, with the break coming up anyway, that'll be good for the entire team. Obviously, this Cardinals team is, they're about 10 games out, maybe 9.5 games out. Um, it's not where they want to be, but it's not insurmountable.
Right.
I mean, they still have not gone on a hot run. Like, I think the most they've won in a row is four. They haven't had, it feels like every year they have an 8 or 9 game win streak. They haven't had that yet. I'm not sure if they will kind of bounce into that sort of win streak, but if they do, you're probably going to be looking at a team that's only 5 or 6 out. Then all of a sudden, it's a real shot at still making a run for the division. So,
Right. And it's crazy to think about, like, in this kind of scenario when a team is like 5 to 10 games out at the All Star break, absolute best case scenario if you're planning on buying is making that third wild card seed. But in this instance, in our division, the best case scenario is winning the division.
right,
Like, that's the absolute, you're not going to make a wild card team with the Giants, the Marlins, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, whoever else it may be out there. You're not getting one of those three wild card spots. Like, I think right now, the Brewers and the Reds are tied for the NL Central. They have the same winning percentage and everything. It's crazy. Like, if the season ended today, and this was kind of an exercise I wanted to do too, so I'm going to see if I can pull up what I had here. But if the season ended today, and you just coin flipped between the Brewers and the Reds to win the Central, whichever team loses that coin flip isn't in the playoffs because they don't have a better
right.
record than the Dodgers, the Giants, or the Marlins.
I mean, the Brewers are the worst team that is over 500 still in the wild card hunt. And I'm looking at 5 teams in front of St. Louis. So
It's
as far
crazy.
as going for the wild card, that's the Mets, who are just barely better,
Yeah.
the Padres, who are just barely better, and then the Cubs, Pirates, and then you have the Brewers. So,
Hmm.
like you were saying, it's so much easier to win this division, especially because you still have some head-to-head matchups against every team. Um, they did blow a pretty good shot against Cincinnati in St. Louis at Busch Stadium. That probably needed to win, and I don't think they got swept, but I think they lost 2 of 3. Um, I don't know. As far as the standings go, I mean, nothing's going to change until you string a few wins together. Winning 3 and then losing 4 isn't going to do you any good.
Right. Right. So yeah, the Cubs took that first London series there, 9-1, pretty emphatic, and I felt really good rolling into game 2 on Sunday, and the Cubs got off to a really, really good start. I mean, 4 runs in the first inning to kind of almost chase Libator from the game at that point. It was a real solid showing, and then all of a sudden, I think there was 1 or 2 outs in the second inning, and Trey Mancini, there's a ball hit to Nico at second, all right? I haven't played baseball since 8th grade. Okay. I know that if I'm playing first base and there's a ball hit in the direction of the second baseman where he's positioned, your first instinct should be to break left and get to the bag for the throw. What for whatever reason and whatever was going through Trey Mancini's mind in that play, he took like 2 steps to the right immediately and then had to backtrack, hurry to the bag, turn around and try to catch a throw barehanded, and then he dropped it and bobbled it, and that just unraveled the whole inning. You could tell how frustrated Stroman was. He's not the type of guy to show that on the field, but you could tell that play really, really bothered him because he needs a reliable defense behind him. One of the biggest reasons he's having as good of a season as he is Nico and Dansby up the middle, protecting those ground balls on his sinker. So he needs that infield defense. And the fact that literally after Mancini booted that play, it was just like one thing after another. Stroman ended up with 3 earned runs on the day, allowing 6 in total, which just unraveled. So the Cardinals, good on them, took advantage of a really, really, really bad fielding error. And at that point, too, after that happened, Mancini was immediately benched for Bellinger, and Bellinger was brought
Yeah,
into play. So that kind of begs the question there: if we're going for a defensive matchup with Stroman, Bellinger is a Gold Glove type of defensive player. Why was he not starting? At first base.
sure.
Should have been that case to begin with, but I digress. He proceeded to go 1 for 3 at the plate after he was pinch hit for. So yeah, I don't know. Stroman ended up going 3 1/3, 8 hits, 6 runs. 3 of those were earned. 1 walk, only 2 strikeouts. Didn't really have a whole lot of command of the zone either. He ended up leaving the game with a blister injury. Fulmer came in, pitched 1 2/3, 2 hits, 1 earned run. Leiter gave an inning and a third. Wisniewski gave 2/3 of an inning, and then Alzolay came in and shut it down. Which, by the way, again, I'm harping on it. I was able to this week talking baseball did like a voicemail episode where they had fans call in with who they should be underrated all-star picks for their teams. And so I called in and I said Alzolay. I was saying his baseball savant page is bleeding red. He's top 10 in most pitching categories for qualified relievers in the National League this year. And that call ended up making the episode, which was pretty cool. So I got to see, Trevor Plouffe and Jake talk about it, and they agreed. I mean, his stats are there, but it sucks because only 4 relievers generally make an all-star team. And if you're not a
Sure.
dominant closer with saves and high strikeout numbers, you're not making the team. Um,
Right.
but I've loved what I've seen out of Owsley so far. His energy is infectious, and he's just been absolutely dominant on the mound. So that was on the Cubs side of things. As for the Cardinals, they really offensively took control of this game. Wilson Contreras had a super, super nice bounce back. Ended up going 4 for 4 with a double. 2 runs scored there. Gorman went 2 for 3 with a walk. Walker went 1 for 3 with a walk. But I think I'm looking at this now. I don't think the Cardinals had a single home run in London,
No, I
which
don't
is
think they did either.
interesting. Um,
And
'Cause
I thought they would have against Steele just because they hit lefties really well.
right. Yeah, the Cubs hit a couple, but I thought that would have been more of an onslaught, especially with the likes of Goldschmidt, Arenado, Gorman, Walker. I mean, you got a ton of power in your lineup. We don't have a lot outside of um, Bellinger, Happ, and Morel are the 3 big power bats in our lineup right now. But
Sure.
on the Cardinal side of things, Libator 2 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 walks, and 3 strikeouts. Ended up sneaking out of that would have been lost because of Mancini. Woodford ended up getting the win in relief there, 2 1/3, 1 hit, one walk, one strikeout. Cabrera, 1 1/3, two strikeouts. Gallegos. Yeah, once we started going down the train of Cardinals relievers, and as I was watching them absolutely dismantle the Cubs lineup start to finish, I was like, all right, it's not happening. I think you could just tell the momentum was just deflated from that team the moment that ball was booted at first base. And like, they were talking about how the Cardinals were kind of under the weather. I think who was supposed to start game two and didn't because they were under the weather. Do you know?
Flaherty.
Flaherty's under the weather, and Hicks was also under the weather, but he ended up coming in and getting the save, just blowing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs left and right down the heart of the plate that
Well,
the Cubs couldn't keep up on.
you had mentioned Gorman. He didn't play any of that game one because he was also sick.
Yeah.
I think he was sick, Hicks was sick, and I think Flaherty was dealing with some back tightness, but
Mm.
he ended up starting against Houston earlier, or Yankees yesterday, so he ended up being okay. But
Good.
yeah, they were without a few players. It still doesn't. I mean, it's not like they were without Arenado and Goldschmidt. They
Right.
could have won either game. A split was the most likely thing to happen with a two-game series. I guess I'm just glad we didn't see a sweep.
Yeah, it was. I think the Cubs. I don't know. I think again. I think they let the Mancini boot get to their head there, but like we had such a prime opportunity to, and I would have said this regardless if this was the Cardinals or not. We had such a prime opportunity to get to 500 and just sweep whatever team was facing us in London. We booted that, and now we're 38-43 after last night's loss to the Guardians. 5 games back of 500 again, kind of seemingly back to that point before we went on the long run that we did that got us within a game of 500. And it's frustrating being at the trade deadline. As you know, you've dealt with this whole season. Cubs have probably dealt with this the whole season. Like, we're fighting to get above 500, which is so frustrating. And not only are we fighting to get above 500, we're fighting to beat out a super bad division. I mean, the Brewers are only 5 games above 500, and we're 5 games under 500. So it's so reachable. And no
Right.
team in this division right now is going on a hot streak. The only team on a winning streak right now is Milwaukee, and they're on a 1 game win streak. Everybody else has lost their most recent one. Um, I'm way more terrified of the Reds than I am the Brewers. The Brewers have one of the lowest offensive production units in all of Major League, the National League at least this year. And Cincinnati is really rolling offensively, but they have absolutely no pitching. They just lost Hunter Green until I think August. Um, I'm gonna be terrified of them if they add some
Yeah.
form of a hitter. And I'll give a little sneaky prediction here. We're going to talk about the trade deadline here in a bit. I've been going over names, what I think might happen here. It would not surprise me because the Reds have like no money on the books coming up after this offseason. They've got a lot of young hitters to deal from in a trade. I'm going to put it out there right now. July 2nd, the Reds are going to acquire Dylan Cease from the White Sox for a package. And they're going to lock him up. Just going to put that out in the universe right now. Dylan Cease, I don't think he's going to get traded. I think it would take an absolutely massive haul. I know teams like the Dodgers, like the Orioles, the Diamondbacks would love to have him. But I think the Reds have to take advantage of the young core while they're still rolling the way that they are. Because De La Cruz is on fire right now. And this may be their best chance in the next several years to win this division. They've got the prospect capital to do it. Cease is still under arbitration control for another year or two. I think a deal could get done there where we see Dylan Cease in a Cincinnati Red uniform, which would be awful for both of us because then our teams have to face him. Not as much as previous years, but he'd be in our division.
Would be terrible.
It would
I
be pretty
really
bad.
don't.
It would be pretty bad. I don't have like a hypothetical deal put together, but you could see something along. If Cincinnati really wanted to go for it and really bolster their pitching, you could see a Dylan Cease and Liam Hendricks deal to back. Like, can you imagine an Alexis Diaz and Liam Hendricks eighth, ninth inning in the playoffs? Like
No,
that's.
I really don't want
I
to.
know Hendricks is hurt right now, but that's a incredible
Yeah.
back end of the
Well,
bullpen
he's
design.
electric, man. I mean, when he's healthy, he's on. So
Right. I see the Reds being buyers, and I see them honestly making a really sneaky good move there. But yeah, that's the division. That's the Cubs' last couple series. We had decided not to really go into the last few series here that the Cubs and Cardinals played just because there's really nothing new. They're still hovering, struggling to get a win streak going. We wanted to take this episode a little more to kind of go over the generic scope of baseball this year, kind of see where we're at. And I think the first thing we're going to do now that we've covered the London series is let's go over the standings as they currently stand without any games having been finished today, where Major League Baseball looks right now. So the American League East, is sort of playing out the way that I thought it would ish. I say that with a huge grain of salt. The Rays are. I said this several episodes ago. I'm done underestimating the Rays. I don't know why I do it every year, but they have the best record in all of Major League Baseball and one of the hardest divisions in all of Major League Baseball, the American League East. They're 57-29 with a plus 158 run differential. What they're doing is incredible. They've scored almost 500 runs. They've only allowed 330 runs. They're 34-10 at the Trop. 34 and
Yeah,
10 at home. That's incredible.
impressive.
Followed up by Baltimore, which is Baltimore in their own right are building off of the strong season they started last year. They're 48-33, which is awesome, but they're 6.5 games back of that division. So I think really the best case scenario they're looking for here is a wild card spot, which I wouldn't be mad about if I was Baltimore, especially now that the wild cards are a best of three and not like a one and done like they should have been.
Yep.
Yankees follow them in third, 9.5 games back. Toronto, who in my preseason predictions I said we're gonna have the best record, I think in all of baseball, if not all of the American League, are above 500. They're 45-39, but they are a whopping 11 games back of the Rays in that division. And then Boston, kind of having a ping pong season two there at 42-42. Any surprises in that division? Anything you've noticed, picked up on, kind of following that throughout the season?
Honestly, I'm just surprised that Baltimore has stayed so afloat. It's nothing against Baltimore. I just didn't see them beating out the Yankees and Blue Jays. Boston at the bottom of the division, which, nothing against Boston. They are 500. It's extremely impressive that they're 500 and they're the bottom of that division. Um, but that's really the biggest shock to me is that Baltimore is in second there. And I actually think Baltimore has a really good shot to make the playoffs.
Oh, 100%. I agree. They do too. Baltimore at one point, I think in May, had one of the worst ERAs in all of baseball. I think they may still have one of the worst starting pitching ERAs in all of baseball, but they currently sit 17th at a 429 collectively. Boston's sitting at 20th at a 440. Um, and then the Tampa Bay Rays are actually third at a 365, only behind the Twins and the Astros. So yeah, it's that whole division. The Rays are, I think, at this point, a very safe bet. 6.5 games at the break is still surmountable for a team, but I'd put confidence right now in the Rays winning that division. I think they're going to be buyers at the deadline. They'll make some sneaky moves. I think they're going to win that division, and I would think that you would agree with that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe Atlanta, I think it's the safest bet.
Yeah. Let's move on to the AL Mid, and we'll get to the NL Mid eventually. The AL Central is a division where there is multiple days usually where none of the teams playing that division are over 500, and there is a very very good chance that we could see the winner of this division with a sub 500 record. The Twins currently sit in first place at 42-42. They only have a plus 32 run differential, and that is the best in that division by a long shot.
The only positive one too.
It's the only positive one. Interesting enough, so they're 42-42. Their expected win loss is 46-38, and they actually have, I think I said, the second best staff ERA, pitching in relief, and yeah, 3.62 ERA in all of baseball. Striking out a really decent amount of batters. That rotation frontlined by Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, and Joe Ryan, really, really good. That bullpen's really good. So it seems like it's the offensive unit that's struggling, which you would think a lineup that includes the likes of Joey Gallo with power, Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa. They did lose Luis Ariz, who's just doing incredible things for the Marlins, but that shouldn't have been enough to absolutely sink them. Um,
No,
the
should not have been.
Twins have the fifth worst average in baseball at a 232 collectively. Home run wise, I'm looking here. They have kind of just scrolling straight to the bottom of the leaderboard. I would think home run wise they should be up there. Yeah, they have the eighth most home runs in all of baseball at 108. Why are they only 500? What's going on here? Oh, they lead the league.
Well,
They lead the league in strikeouts by 60. So that's a number.
yeah, that'll contribute.
They're not bottom and they're about midway point in walks. I would think they'd be up there in stolen bases too with Buxton and Correa, but they are actually second to last. They have 39 stolen bases on the year. Um, that's really confusing. So I'm not a Twins fan, so I'm not following it. But with the star power on there and the rotation performing the way that it is, 42-42 seems like awful. for where they
I
should
mean, I'm
be.
just looking at some of the advanced metrics here. They're 22 and 26 against teams above 500. That's not sustainable for a playoff team. I do
Nope.
think you have to play better than that.
Yep.
Um, their home record and away record is they're mirrored. They're 23 and 19 at home, 19 and 23 away. So that's fine for a 500 team. Their expected win loss is 46 and 38. So you're looking at a 4 game difference there,
Right.
and it tells me. I mean, are they blowing games
Yeah, let me
late?
go. Let me pull up their schedule here and just see what's going on because
I think that's it.
I can't fathom what it's
I
got to
mean,
be.
while you're looking at that, just looking at Cleveland and Detroit,
Yeah.
I'm actually a little surprised that Detroit is above the White Sox. Again, I didn't expect the White Sox to run away with this division, but I did think they would be around a 500 team. Um, the biggest surprise for me here is Cleveland. I really did think that Cleveland was going to have a commanding lead throughout most of the year of this division, and they just don't. Again, most of this division has been under 500 the entire season. But for a team that has Jose Ramirez, Shane Bieber, Stephen Kwan, I really thought this team would be a little bit better than it actually is. So I think once Cleveland can kind of put it together, I could still see them winning this division by more than a few games. Um, but I will see. I mean, it kind of depends what sort of trade deadline they have.
So yeah, I pulled up the Twins schedule here, and I'm looking kind of starting in May because that's where I feel like it's going. They had a couple stretches where they strung some wins together. So the Twins won 4 in a row to start the year, lost two, won two, and they put another 4 game win streak together. They've had multiple 3 game losing streaks, and it's weird. They're very spotty. They'll go on a little bit of a stretch. May was not kind to them from what I'm seeing so far. They lost 2 of 3 to Cleveland. Lost one in the 3 series versus San Diego. Lost one against the Cubs. Went 1 for 3 against the Dodgers. Went 1 of 3 against the Angels. Went 1 of 3 against the Giants. 1 of 3 against the Blue Jays. They won 2 against the Astros. They split against Cleveland in 4 and then got swept. So they went on a 5 game lose streak Saturday, June 3rd to Thursday, June 8th. Lost the last 2 in that Cleveland series and then got swept by Tampa. Um, they went on another 3 game losing streak, one in Detroit to Boston. And then they got swept by the Braves the 26th through the 28th. They currently are on a 2 game win streak, though, against the Orioles, winning 8-1 on Friday and 1-0 yesterday. So they climb back to 500. I'm looking here. They've got one more game against Baltimore today, 3 against Kansas City, and then 3 more against Baltimore to end the first half.
That's pretty rough.
So realistic expectations, you want to. I mean, if you could sweep Baltimore today, finish that sweep, that should. And they're in Baltimore, so they're not at home.
Okay.
So then you've got 3 at home with Bailey Ober, Sonny Gray, and Joe Ryan going against the Orioles with 3 not great starting pitchers. So there's a really good chance here. I mean, there is a scenario where they roll into the All Star break 48 and 42 if they finish these couple sweeps here, and it's very hard to win that many games in a row. But I mean, best case scenario, they win today. They're 43 and 42. You take 2 of 3 from the Royals, you're 45 and 43, and then you take 2 of 3 again, 47 and 44 going into the All Star break, somewhere in there. I think that's gonna do it for them. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of looking in the second half here. I don't want to take too much more time on the Twins, but this whole division is just an interesting head case. Um, okay, so entering the second half, they play. Oh, that's perfect. So for them, they play their first 3 games back in Oakland. Then they play 4 in Seattle, 3 at home versus the White Sox, then 3 more versus Seattle, 3 against the Royals, 3 against the Cardinals. Their first difficult team that they face won't be until August 4th. And no disrespect to the Mariners when I say difficult team, but the most difficult team they play in the second half is the Diamondbacks, and it's a 3 game set, August 4th. So they have a
So
really big
they got
second half
some
of July.
chance to make up some ground there.
They're
And
going to need to add a couple bats, I think, so they'll be active at the trade deadline. They don't need any real rotation help at this point. But the second half of their schedule is not that difficult. I mean, you've got that series against Detroit or against Arizona. You've got Philly for 3. You've got the Brewers for 2, Texas for 4, 7. You got 7 total versus the Rangers in the second half. The Rays, the Reds. That's really it. So there's a chance. I mean, they could. I don't think they're going to finish under 500. I think they shouldn't with this type of schedule. Um, but yeah, that division, Twins are up top. Cleveland is second at 40 and 42. Detroit 36 and 46, mainly because of Eduardo Rodriguez's resurgence as a top of the rotation pitcher. The White Sox are 36 and 49, and the Royals are an abysmal 24 and 59. I did not think the Royals were going to be this bad. I really didn't. I thought Brady Singer's having a horrible year after the great year he had last year, and that rotation's a mess. Zach Greinke's a mess. That whole Bobby Witt Jr. can't hit a fastball, so he's very much so fading as a hyped up young talent. I don't know what the Royals are going to do. They don't really have a ton of quality prospects coming up, and on the flip side of that coin, they also don't have a lot of tradable assets. They just flipped Aroldis Chapman to the Rangers, and it was crazy. I don't know if you saw the return for that trade. Those guys were not on their. One of them was a fringe AAA outfielder who was already on the 40 man. The other one was like an 18-year-old kid. And I read a report from the Athletic that Ken Rosenthal wrote that was saying the asking price for Chapman was just sky high, and that the Royals were talking about like, listen, if you want a month of extra control of Chapman, you're going to need to pay up now.
Mm-hmm.
So if this was the return for Chapman a month before the trade deadline, what would it have been at the trade deadline? I know Chapman struggled recently, but he's got postseason experience, still throws relatively close to 100 consistently. Besides the fact he's a clubhouse cancer, I don't really know
And
why the
I think that
return
may
was
be it.
bad.
I think he's a bit of a liability as far as, what allegation might come up
Yeah. Well, good on the
when you're in the
Rangers.
middle of a pennant
Good
chase.
on the
But
Rangers. And honestly, if there's any manager that can handle his temperament and will like demand the respect from Chapman, it's Bruce Bochy.
probably Bochy, yeah.
100%. Bochy's just completely changed that. So speaking of Bruce Bochy and the Texas Rangers, let's move on to the American League West, where the Rangers have done a phenomenal job this year of everything that they're doing. They're 50 and 33. They kind of hit a skid in their last 10. They're 5 and 5, but they have a plus 158 run differential. Their expected win loss is a 6-game difference from where they're at now. So they're 50 and 33. Their expected win loss is 56 and 27. They're relatively even at home, 27 and 16 at home, 23 and 17 away. They're even 21 and 21 against teams over 500. And this division that supposedly, besides the Athletics, was supposed to have 4 really competitive teams in it this year. The Astros are in second place. They're 5 games back at 45 and 38. The Angels are showing signs of life at 44 and 41. The Mariners have just, fallen off the rails a little bit. They do have a plus run differential, but they're only 39 and 42. And they have a really bad record, 15 and 29 against teams over 500. And then obviously, as we know, the Oakland Athletics are in last place. And they are actually creeping up on a better record than the Royals. I would not have expected that with the start that Oakland had. A couple of games from now, at the All-Star break, we may see that the Royals actually have the worst record in all of baseball.
I mean, I think they can owe it all to their little hot streak they went on.
Yeah.
Around the time of that reverse boycott, that definitely skyrocketed them up close to the Royals. Oakland should finish with the worst record in baseball.
They
I
should.
think the Royals should be embarrassed if they get passed up. But
Well, the reason that the Athletics will is the players that are playing well right now. Seth Brown, they've got a couple guys in the rotation who will probably be dealt. They've got pieces to move, which will make them an inherently worse team down the stretch. The Royals don't. They've been public. They're not going to trade Salvador Perez. Greinke is getting absolutely no return in value, and unless you're willing to sell low on guys like Brady Singer, it doesn't make sense to trade anybody else on that roster. So yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, the Angels are another team that surprised me. 44 and 41. I said in our preseason predictions that they would make the third wild card. I'm not as confident in that right now, but I am happy to see that they are performing somewhat well up until this point, giving a little bit of life to try to keep Shohei. They're 3 and 7 in their last 10, lost 4 in a row. They only have a plus 30 run differential, and they're 17 and 27 against teams over 500. So not sustainable at all.
right,
But I do think they will buy. I mean, they traded for Mike Moustakas from the Rockies after absolutely obliterating them. Literally, like it was minutes after they finished that 25-1 game or whatever it was. They announced that they acquired him from the Rockies after they just pummeled him on the Rockies. Anthony Rendon seems to be kind of finding his stroke again a little bit. I feel like, did the Angels acquire somebody else? I feel like I'm thinking of somebody else they got, but I can't remember. Maybe it was just Moustakas. Um, Ben Joyce, he's on the IL right now, but that kid that they drafted, they're bringing up all their prospects from the 21 or 2020 draft. Zach Neto, the shortstop, Ben Joyce. They brought up another pitcher. I think they're going to use out of the bullpen from like high A or double A or something. So they're trying to funnel these guys through quick. I don't blame them. They need help. They need to do everything they possibly can to get Otani to the playoffs. And I guess I'll forward that into this kind of question. As it currently stands, they are 7 games back of this division, and I checking now on their wild card status. They are only 2 games back of the wild card with Toronto in front of them. As it stands right now, and I am convinced the Angels will be buyers at the deadline unless something incredible happens over these next 7 games and they lose 7 in a row. What do you think? Do you think the Angels will make the playoffs this year?
No.
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 Why?
I think Texas and Houston will beat them out. Obviously, you're going to have at least one team from the Central make the playoffs. But even if you go no wild card teams there, someone between Baltimore, I mean, the Yankees and the Yankees have a better record than the Angels right now anyway. So if you have 3 wild card spots, let's say as things stand, Baltimore get the top one. Yes. Baltimore would get the top one. Houston gets the second one. Yankees get the third one. I just don't see the Angels surpassing. The Yankees have been playing pretty bad baseball all season. I don't know if the Angels can surpass the Yankees when they start playing good baseball.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even if they did make it in the playoffs, I don't think they have the star power or the pitching prowess to make it far.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good story. I
it
would
is.
love to see it.
It
I'm
is.
just trying to be realistic.
I kind of try to put myself in the shoes of a GM, and kind of think about threading this needle. They really shot themselves in the foot waiting this long to make a decision on Otani, or making a decision, waiting this long to really construct a roster around him. Like they just pushed it off until the last year. Mike Trout's having a relatively down year. Rendon isn't nearly the player they thought they would be when they gave him $245 million or whatever it was. Otani's been everything they could have asked for and more, and is the only reason they're anywhere close to above 500. I mean, the man has a really, really good chance at winning both MVP, which I think he's a lock for, and Cy Young this year. I don't think it'll happen.
He's in the triple crown.
Yeah,
race.
it's insane what he's doing. It's incredible, and I literally cannot wait for this offseason so I can follow like what his free agency is going to detail and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I try to look at it from a GM standpoint and be like, okay, for the direction of this franchise, there is probably a less than 5% chance that we are going to re-sign Otani this offseason. I think that's a really comfortable number, less than 5%. I don't think it'll happen. They haven't proven that they can win. He wants to win. And even if they offered him $800 million, I don't think he would do it. We can't really trade him at this point, because, I mean, we could at the deadline. It would just completely obliterate our entire fan base, doing it mid-season rather than if we had done it this off-season and just bit the bullet then. Can't trade Mike Trout. Can't trade Anthony Rendon. Have no quality starting pitchers to deal that are worth dealing at this point. Have no quality position players to deal from, maybe besides Hunter Renfroe. You're kind of stuck, And if I'm the GM of the Angels, I think I bite the bullet and I think I trade Otani, even if we're a couple games above 500 at the deadline. For the directional, the prospect package that you can get for even just half a season of Otani, because the team is paying for 10 starts just in the regular season, and then you're paying for 2 months of a bat there before you make the playoffs. The prospect package that you could get for Shohei Otani at this deadline is a franchise-altering package. Would have been way more franchise altering if you did it at the winter meetings last year, but you have a chance to recover here. The Angels have a very pitching heavy system with very few quality impact bats waiting to come up, and Jared Walsh has really fallen off at first base this year. I don't know what team would do it. I don't know what the prospect package would look like, but if I'm the Angels, I'm full sending an Otani trade at the deadline. and then going at it again this offseason. Not like Anthony Rendon level, just handing out a contract to hand out a contract and get a big name over there, but restructuring the entire team around a new prospect core and around supporting Mike Trout through the last 10 years of his contract or whatever's left. I don't know. That's just me. I'm sure the fans would absolutely hate me for doing that, but you got to put the franchise first sometimes. And trading Ohtani
Absolutely.
in that moment would be putting the franchise first.
Yeah, I think you have to. And when we talk about players that are going to get traded, I got an opinion.
Go for it.
Well, it's I just later when we're talking about
Hmm.
players that we could see getting traded. I have an Atani piece, but
Ooh, okay. I like
I
it.
mean it's it's pretty much what you said. You're
Yeah.
not going to resign him. Um, I think they already pissed off this fan base enough when Artie Moreno put it up for sale, the team, and then took it back from being for sale. I think they were kind of looking forward to a new era of Angels baseball,
Yep.
one that's less of a laughing stock. Um, you're not retaining Otani. You're just not. He's gonna go somewhere else. I don't care how much you offer him. So you may as well probably trade him. And if you're not gonna trade him, you buy. You buy and you buy, you buy. You do whatever you can to add quality players around you.
Yep. Yep. And then,
That's what you have to do.
yeah, and for me at that point, too, it's like, is it really worth spending all this prospect capital to put talent around Otani for 3 months when your
Probably
chances
not.
of winning the World Series are. I mean, any team can do it. The Nationals did it several years ago with a marginal record. It's possible, but I personally would not risk the future of this franchise by trading prospect capital to have a mediocre chance at making it out of the wild card series. That's just my
Yep.
take on
The
it.
risky
It's a
game.
tough situation. I feel for that franchise, and they're gonna have to find a new direction in a couple months here. But yeah, anyways, let's move on to the National League here, the National League East, which has been another really surprising division for a lot of reasons. I should have taken the Braves as the division favorite in my preseason predictions. Kick myself all the time for looking at those, but they are currently 55 and 27, just obliterating everybody in their path. I've seen so many videos on Twitter where the Braves, the talking baseball tweets, the Braves were down 2-0 or 3-0 and come roaring back. Then they score like 10 unanswered runs and move on to win the game. They're incredible. They're like I said, they're 55 and 27. They're 9-1 in their last 10 on a 7-game win streak, a plus 136 run differential. They're 29 and 15 at home, 26 and 12 on the road, and 28 and 16 against teams over 500. That is a powerhouse, and I don't think any other team in the National League sniffs them right now
No, I
at
don't
all.
think so either. I think the entire actual the league is led by two teams that stand head and shoulders above anyone else, and that's of course we already talked about it, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's the easiest way. It's the easiest World Series prediction to make right now. Two
Hmm.
extremely dominant number one seeds are, and that would
Of
be
course, baseball is so unpredictable. I mean,
right,
it could go any way,
right.
but those are your juggernauts, those two teams.
That'd be an incredible World Series too. Maybe not ratings wise for TV, but if you're a baseball fan, that's an incredible series to watch. The high profile
Yeah,
names on the Braves and the high pitching matchup that the Rays would throw out there. Um, Young stars, Wander Franco, Ronald Acuna, all those guys playing in a World Series would be incredible, electric. Um, but yeah, so besides the Braves, the Marlins are in second place at 48 and 36. They do have a negative 19 run differential, and they're way outperforming what they should be. Their expected win loss is 40 and 44, so that's a huge margin right there. That's an 8 game margin of a difference right there. Um, Gotten lucky. They do have some really good young pitching. Yuri Perez, I think his name is like dominating after he came up. Alcantara is starting to slowly find his form again. They do need some
hmm
reinforcements, and we'll touch on that on our in my section of the trade deadline predictions and whatnot here in a bit. But they are 20 and 19 against teams over 500, so it's not like they're getting swamped left and right. And they've been way better at home than they have been on the road. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? No. I think the Dodgers, or I think the Braves are winning that division. I think the Phillies are slowly starting to refine themselves, recalibrate after the really bad start they had. And especially if Miami does not add impact at the deadline, I can't see them hanging on for second in that division.
really.
Yeah, no, I mean it's let me pull up. I mean, go ahead if you want to talk a little bit about the Phillies and the Mets here while I pull up some information on the Marlins. Go for it.
Well, like you were saying, their expected win loss is lower. Uh, I think their pitching is good enough to get them through games, and it's not all Luis Reyes, but it's a lot of Luis Reyes, and I think he's a huge piece to that offense. I know Soler has gotten a bit of his bat back.
Yep.
Some of these guys that they signed that had really down years last year have came back and performed a little bit, and just aided by the fact that the Phillies or Mets are not good enough to be way higher in the standings. I could actually see Miami slipping in as the 3 seed.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them slipping in. I'll
Hmm.
also take a look at their second half schedule here in a bit and kind of see where they're at. But yeah, Luis Arias, he's hitting 388. It's incredible what he's doing. Just keeping that offensive float there. Joey Wendell's hitting 281. Brian De La Cruz 277. Jorge Soler has 22 home runs on the year. Their bench is stable, and then their rotation fronted. Alcantara is down to a 4.82 ERA, so he's working his way back to where he needs to be. He's not going to get anywhere close to the levels he was when he won Cy. But Jesus Laredo, which is looking like a highway robbery by the Marlins by the day, they were traded Starling Marte straight up for him at the deadline a couple
Hmm.
years ago. 6-5 with a 3.53 ERA. He's got 112 strikeouts in 97 innings. Braxton Garrett has a 3.53 ERA through 81 innings. Edward Cabrera was struggling a little bit. Good strikeout numbers, but he's on the 15 DIL. And then Yuri Perez, one of their young guns that they just brought up, 5-2 with a 2.47 ERA. He's got 54 strikeouts through 47 in a third inning. Their bullpen's been really, really good. I never really noticed this. So AJ Puck, who they acquired, I believe from it was either the Orioles or the Athletics. I think it was the Athletics.
Athletics. Yeah.
He has a 2.88 ERA and 13 saves this year. So really good numbers there. And Tanner Scott, Andrew Nardi, all have played really well. Steven Okert, a bunch of kind of no-name guys that I hadn't really heard before. They've all contributed really well to this Marlins bullpen. So yeah, I could definitely see that they definitely need another starter, I think, and probably offense is where they're going to be leaning more so than anything. Um, yeah, so I guess looking at this, there's a chance. I could definitely see it. The question that I run into is the Phillies have been getting hot as of late, and I don't really know if the Marlins are going to end up being better than the Dodgers or the Giants, which is where kind of the other two wild card teams fall right now. So if the Phillies enter that picture, I don't really know. The Phillies are still 4 games back of the Marlins in the standings, so I don't really know. We'll have to see how the second half plays out. But I would say percentage wise right now, I'd give Marlins a 50% chance of making the postseason right now, and I think that's
I think they'd
generous.
be happy with that.
I think they'd be
Yeah, I
happy
think
with
they
that
would.
too. I think that's generous, and that will change after the deadline, and obviously as June plays out or whatever. But yeah, the Phillies 44-38. They climb back over 500. They have a +7 run differential. Um, they are not good against teams over 500, 19-27. And then there's the Mets. Steve Cohen's Mets. $350+ million payroll Mets. 37-46. 9 games back of the division. Or sorry, 9 games back of the wild card. Eight can one of the most absurd things you could have told me at the beginning of the year is that by the All-Star break the Mets would be 18 and a half games out of the division.
I know. I
That
can't believe it.
that
I
sounds
didn't know it was that deep.
ridiculous. 18 and a half. I mean, it just goes credit to the Braves for performing as well as they are, but 18 and a half games out of that division at the All-Star break for the New York Mets. Dude,
Believable.
it's incredible. This has to be one of the biggest like flop seasons in all of baseball history.
Right.
For the amount of money that they spent, the talent that's on that roster. I mean, granted, I think I touched on this a little bit at the beginning of the year. When you put your faith in two pushing 40-year-olds at the top of your rotation who both are not playing well, and then a bullpen that's kind of in shambles, none of the offensive players that should be performing over the top, aside from Brandon Nimmo and Pete
Hmm.
Alonso when he's healthy, nobody else is really playing well. Oh, that was the other guy. Sorry, the Angels acquired Eduardo Escobar from the Mets before they got Mike Moustakas. That was the other guy I was thinking of. Um,
Right. Right.
it's
The
incredible the
kind of a man
downfall of this
without a
team.
position over there.
Yeah, just an incredible mess. And that begs the question, and I think we'll probably touch on this a little bit in the deadline aspect. What are they going to do? You have to, at this point, sell. You're 18 and a half games back, and you're 9 games out of a wild card with a lot of other good teams in front of you, and you have a lot of problems. I don't see a scenario where the Mets buy this year. I can't.
It'd be tough to see. I mean, I think I could see them sort of retooling.
Yeah.
So, not selling Lindor or whatever.
Oh, no,
I
no,
could
no,
see
no.
them retooling.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they probably take their chances next year with a similar team. So,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. That seems most realistic for me. I don't know if they'll trade off all their guys. Another hint at a guy I could see getting moved is Max Scherzer, but
I
I
was just
don't
about
think
to
that
say that.
actually. I don't think it changes the chemistry of their team all that much.
No. Now, well, you talk about Max Scherzer for this. I had Scherzer down there too, but honestly, I could see Verlander being moved just as easily. Scherzer's got another year on his deal left. So does Verlander.
Yeah,
Verlander's the older one, but if a West Coast team comes calling and Steve Cohen's willing to eat a pretty penny of that deal, I think Verlander could be a Dodger or a Giant or even an Angel if the Angels are buying.
absolutely.
Um, so yeah, horrible there. And then the Nationals, as we all expected, are in last place in that division, 33 and 49, not going anywhere. Um, and then we got the NL mid, NL Central. We kind of touched that already. Reds and Brewers are tied for first place as of this recording on Sunday afternoon. Pirates are 39 and 43, fading very fast. I would not be surprised to see them drop below the Cubs at some point in fourth place. And honestly, the Cardinals have had a rough season. I don't think they finish the season in last place. I don't think
I
the
don't think
Cardinals
so
do.
either.
I think the Pirates end up falling down that pole, and I think they sell at the deadline, settle back where they belong at the bottom of that division. They had a cute little run there where they got to flex their muscles a little bit. Andrew McCutchen homecoming, nice little story, but it's time to go back home. You've extended your stay. No, I'm not really going to touch too much more on this division. We talked about it with the Cubs and the Cardinals. And then that leaves the NL West. The Arizona Diamondbacks, another super surprising team led by Zach Gallen in that rotation, Corbin Carroll out there, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Evan Longoria is out there, Ketel Marte. A lot of really big names are 50 and 34, 6 and 4 in their last 10, plus 40 run differential. Expected win loss, they're playing better than they should be. Expected win loss is about a 4 game difference. Um, and they're 24 and 23 against teams over 500. Way better on the road than they are at home. 24 and 20 at home, 26 and 14 on the road there, and 3 games up on the Dodgers right now, and 3.5 games up on the Giants. Interesting. All 3 of those teams are going to be buying. The Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, and the Giants. The Giants surprised me again. I guess I didn't put enough faith in their veteran rotation as I probably should have. Conforto's been really good out there. Jock Peterson's been really good out there. Brandon Crawford continues to play very well. The only really disappointment in San Francisco over the last couple of years has been Joey Bart. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Buster Posey, and he never really panned out.
Right.
Dodgers have one of the worst one of the worst team ERAs in all of baseball, which is not in all of baseball, but they're in the bottom half of that list. Any notes you have on those 3 big teams right there?
Um, I'm surprised to see San Francisco that high, especially with San Diego being that low. Um, I mean, we could talk about San Diego, the Mets, the Cardinals. They all have one thing in common, and that's that they're massively underperforming this year. But the Dodgers shouldn't be completely let off the hook. I mean, they're still in a good spot to make the playoffs, but this is a team that expects to win their division every year. So props to the Diamondbacks for so far through half the season having flipped the script on that.
Yeah, good for them. I think the Dodgers are going to buy pretty hard. Not pretty hard. I think the Dodgers are going to buy. I don't think they really care what happens this year because they're preparing to empty their bank for Otani this offseason,
Hmm.
and then build around him as it comes. Uh, you know, yeah, like I just said, I don't really think they care what happens this year. The Giants are kind of just here for the ride at this point. They're not a true full-fledged contender in my eyes, but they'll definitely buy their way into the playoffs if they have to at the deadline. I think the Diamondbacks had a couple pitchers, one with long-term control. They had another bat in there somewhere. And that's where the San Diego Padres come in for me. I think we could see an interdivision trade there for a starting pitcher, specifically Blake Snell, who's on an expiring deal. Um, could see that happening. The Padres, I like the Mets. Massive payroll, massive names: Tatis, Bogarts. Um, I'm blanking. Darvish, Soto,
Musgrove.
Musgrove, Snell, all these guys. 38 and 45, 11 and a half games back of the NL West. Another team I dubbed this year that would wipe the floor with the Dodgers, and that has not happened. Their expected win loss is better than they're playing, so they're 38 and 45. Their X win loss is 44 and 39. So definitely a big skew there. Um, so yeah, 6 game skew there. I don't know what they're gonna do. I lean right now to them selling at this point. I think it could be the second year in a row we see Juan Soto moved. He hasn't been Juan Soto since he got to San Diego. Um,
Sure.
they can't really afford him. Their payroll is a mess. They have no prospect depth. Trading him, trading Snell, and trading maybe one other guy would restock that farm system enough for them to go out and spend next year. Because I have full confidence they'll also be in the Otani sweepstakes. If they're going to go out and offer Judge 400 million, Turner 300 million, whatever it was, I think they'll be out there in the Otani sweepstakes. I think clearing Soto's salary off the books definitely helps with that because they'll be making close to 30 million next year in ARB. Um, so yeah, I could see them selling. Don't know where Soto would end up going at this point, but for me right now, I at this point in the season, 11 and a half games back of the division and 8 back of a wild card spot, there's a chance the Padres don't make the playoffs. I think that's a pretty high chance.
I agree.
So that's a quick overview. And just to recap here, I'll go over the American League and National League divisional leaders and wild card. And the American League, and this will go 1 through 6 seeding wise. It's the Rays, the Rangers, and the Twins as the division leaders, and then the Orioles, the Yankees, and the Astros as the wild card teams. And in the National League, the Braves, the Diamondbacks, and the Reds and Brewers are currently tied in divisional leaders. The Marlins, Dodgers, and Giants are all the wild card teams for the National League. So let's do this. I just want to do this quick little game here. If the playoffs started today, we're going to do it as if none of the games had finished as the standings right now. The American League wildcard team would be the 4 seed Orioles versus the 5 seed Yankees. Who wins that game or wins that series?
Orioles.
I agree with that. I think the Yankees could do it, but I think the Orioles will catch fire enough. And then we got the Twins and the Astros in the other American League wildcard series.
Astros.
I agree. I don't think the Twins. I don't think a team that's glimmering at 500 wins that. All right, and then we've got divisional series: Rays or Orioles.
Rays.
I agree. I'll let you know if I disagree, but so far I have not disagreed. This one we might disagree here: Rangers or Astros divisional series.
I honestly would say Astros.
I'm gonna disagree with you there. I'm gonna say the Rangers. So we'll do 2 different little splits here. Okay, so Rays, Astros in the ALCS, Caleb, for you.
Rays.
Rays, yeah, I think
Yeah,
that. So
and
Rays,
yeah, I gotta level with you. Whether you put the Rangers or not, I would go Rays.
I would go Rays there too. I don't think the Rangers, and this is all like as it stands today before trade deadline additions. I think the Rays do it. Okay, Marlins, Dodgers, NL wild card. I think that's an interesting one. Who do you pick there?
Dodgers in a series for sure.
You think so?
Yeah, if you got one game, I think the Marlins could luck into it. I gotta go Dodgers.
See, that's where we're already disagreeing right there. I take the Marlins. I take the
Really?
I take the Marlins in that series. The Dodgers, like I said, have one of the worst team ERAs in baseball, and the Marlins are putting up some numbers, and they have one of the better team ERAs in baseball. If you can shut down
You
that,
can have Kershaw pitch in that one of those games. I think
you'd
that's
have
huge.
Kershaw, and if Urias is healthy, you have him there. But then if Sandy, I would also put Sandy on the spot for a playoff spot. I'd have Sandy game 1, Luzardo game 2.
Yep.
I think that's a 3 game series, and I think the Marlins could edge it out. But okay, we'll go with the Dodgers for this too. And
I
then
think you could go either one because spoiler alert, I'm gonna go
yeah, I'm
Braves.
gonna go Braves. Yeah, yeah. We'll just go ahead and move the Braves to the World Series here, because I think is that what you were gonna do? Did you have Braves Rays
I think Diamondbacks would give the Braves a
a
good
run?
run for their money, but
Well,
I would still go Braves.
let's do this then. I coin flipped and it landed on the Reds for the divisional title. So Reds Giants for the wild card. Who do you got there?
Dude, I think it's the
I
Giants.
agree. Just because of right now, their pitching is better.
Yeah.
And then Giants Diamondbacks. I would go Diamondbacks.
Uh huh.
and then Diamondbacks Braves. I would go Braves just because they're it sucks to do like the number one seeds in each league, but that's just how it is. The Braves are just such a complete team, and so are the Rays. Now this is going to be the question. I'm thinking about my answer right now. In the World Series, Rays or Braves, and how many games? Season ends today. No further additions.
Ready?
Yeah, let's do it on three.
Braves.
Ready? Oh,
Oh
you already did it.
shoot,
Darn
man.
it. What was it?
Braves in 6.
I go Rays in five.
I like it. I think we
Rays
should
in
revisit.
five. The Rays pitching. I'm saving this. I've got this all saved here. Rays in five. Their pitching is just so dominant. If
Yeah.
Shane McClanahan's healthy and Tyler Glasnow's healthy, and I think they had another pitcher at the deadline, and they've shown they can rack up runs against good teams. The Braves are a phenomenal team, but I think the Rays are hungry after being close a couple years ago. They want it. I'd say Rays in five in that scenario. I don't see
I
a
I think
series.
I'm gonna say just because the Braves experience, that's why I'm going with them. I think their rotation is good enough to keep them in games, and I think
Yep,
their offense is a little bit better.
yep. I'll say this right now too. In a scenario where the Rays are in the World Series, in any scenario, I do not see the World Series going longer than 5 games.
Okay.
So we'll revisit that in October. All right, so that kind of recaps the MLB standings overview. Let's go ahead, since we got a little bit of time left here. Let's go ahead and just move straight on to the trade deadline talk. So as I said earlier, I think the Cubs are probably sellers. I think the Cardinals are probably retoolers. Cubs are probably also, you can categorize them as retoolers. Give me some big names who could be moved. Cubs, Cardinals, all of Major League Baseball. Go.
So I'll go ahead and start Cardinals wise, just because that's what I know best. Um, they're not trading Goldschmidt or Arenado. I I just got to say it right now. They're not trading either one. This team views this team as a business, not a baseball team. Goldschmidt sells tickets. I mean, Arenado, I think there's a less than 0.1% chance of it happening.
Oh yeah,
You got like 6 more years with that guy.
yeah.
Goldschmidt, I know people want to fantasize about it because he's got a year and a half left. They're just not trading him. He sells tickets. That makes them competitive. They're gonna roll this same team out next year and expect to compete. They can't do that if they don't have Goldschmidt. So even if they don't extend him, I just don't see a trade happening. I do see them potentially trading Jordan Montgomery if these
Mm-hmm.
next 7 games go super poorly. Jordan Hicks, who has been lights out for the last month and a half. And I think the most likely trade candidate on the team is Jack Flaherty. I think the relationship with Jack Flaherty is extremely strained throughout this entire season. I think his health issues in the past, as well as just like, I mean, he was the one who had the whole issue with Contreras earlier this year. I just think it's such a like a done deal. He's going to be somewhere pitching for some other team. One guy that I think would be interesting to see in a trade, only because they did just give Wilson Contreras a lot of money, is Ivan Herrera, who's doing really well in AAA. Um, it's super easy to say, well, bring him up and trade Kisner. Kisner's not going to get you anything, but Herrera could potentially get you an interesting prospect or be part of a bigger package. Um, so as far as the Cardinals go, I think that's it. You could make the argument for either one of Paul DeYoung or Tommy Edman. I don't think Brendan Donovan is likely to be traded just because he plays so many positions and he's younger than Edman. So I think Edman or DeYoung could go. You're looking at that catching prospect, Ivan Herrera, and then you got a few pitchers there that could potentially be included in a deal. And that's as far as I see them going for a retool. Um, as far as like other players in the league, I think Shane Bieber could go from the Guardians. Dylan Cease, we talked about that earlier. I think the White Sox are likely to trade probably Dylan Cease and even more so Lucas Giolito. Um, he's on an expiring deal. I just think it makes too much sense for them to try to get a little bit of a return because they're not going to re-sign him.
Yeah.
I did put Shohei here. I know we talked about potential situations with the Angels. I think you have to buy hard or sell on Shohei, and you just can't sit in the middle because that's what they did last year. And if they do that this year, they're going to end up with nothing. Um, Max Scherzer, and I will add, you made an interesting point there. Him and Verlander are basically on the same type of deal, an expiring deal. So I think one or the other are likely to go with how bad that team has played. I just put Scherzer because um, he has been traded before. Obviously, we saw from the Nationals to the Dodgers. I think he's likely to be traded again.
Right.
Starling Marte, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Mets to sell on. Um, I put Flaherty in my list, but I already made that note with the Cardinals. Same with Jordan Hicks. And then as far as I got a few more here from the NL Central, both from the Cubs, I think Bellinger and Stroman you could see traded. I know Stroman wants to be extended. I just don't know how the Cubs front office views that. And then Corbin Burns, I think, is likely to be traded if the Brewers falter any more throughout the next week or two.
100%. Yeah, as for Marcus Stroman in the Cubs front office, it's not happening. There's a report I think that came out that said the Cubs front office is not inclined to extend him prior to the trade deadline. So if he's still here after it, great. But if he's still here after it, his price tag's going to go up, and everybody knows that because there's leverage there at that point. Um, you can't offer Stroman a qualifying offer; he's already had it. So you literally will let him walk for nothing if you don't extend him because he's opting out of that deal. Um, so yeah, I'll start with the Cubs here, and I threw a couple hypothetical proposals together, and I am the absolute worst at these. So Cubs fans who are listening, take no grain of salt if these would be anywhere near realistic. I do have Marcus Stroman getting traded as of right now with Mark Leiter Jr., one of our best relievers we've had this year, to the future World Series champion Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for left-hander Mason Montgomery, who's their number 5 overall prospect, and infielder Olivis Basabe, their number 6 overall prospect. Basabe can play all over the infield, and he can play third base really well, which is what the Cubs need. And then a left-handed pitching prospect in Montgomery, who is close to the majors, gives the Cubs depth as they don't have a lot of starting pitching quality depth that's close to the majors ready to go up to this point. The Cubs have been inclined to include cash in deals in recent years to offset salary to better the return. I think they do the same thing here. Stroman will be owed about $12.5 million for the remainder of this season. I think they include somewhere around $10 to $12 million in cash to do that deal. So that's one. I also have Drew Smiley getting traded to the Atlanta Braves to shore up their rotation. He's a former Brave, been there a while, knows that organization, would love to probably be back there if he's not in Chicago. I don't know what the return would look like. He struggled a lot in his last couple starts. This is kind of an interesting one for me. I have it as a 1-for-1 swap for right-hander Huascar Ynoa, who is out, I think, with Tommy John surgery, or it was some other injury that kept him out. He was a starter, has good strikeout numbers, had like a 4.05 ERA 2 years ago. He's 25 now. I view him more as an organizational back end of the bullpen piece to pair with Alzolay. He's got a really, really nice fastball, high velocity kind of guy. Don't expect anything out of him as a starter, and it would clear a 40-man spot for the Braves, which they'll probably need this offseason. So I would definitely try to factor in that kind of deal around Drew Smiley. And then kind of here's the big one. Here's a wild card scenario. And there's probably would be more to this deal than I would think. But I'll go ahead and put. Yeah, we'll do it as it stands right here. I have Cody Bellinger to the Astros, by the way, is a kind of a one-off thing. I don't have a deal put in place, but with Alvarez out, they need a left-handed power bat in the outfield or DH very, very badly, and Bellinger would fill that role. And I don't think it would cost an arm and a leg to get him because he hasn't been playing as well as he was before the knee injury. Here's my bold prediction for the Cubs trade deadline: Kyle Hendricks and Julian Merriweather to the Miami Marlins in exchange for Sixto Sanchez. I don't know if you remember that name or not, but
I
Sixto
love
Sanchez.
6
Sixto was the main piece in the JT Realmuto trade, has been dealing with injuries like crazy, still rehabbing. And again, he's another guy I view as a back of the rotation piece rather than a starter at this point. And then Josh Simpson, who is a left-handed pitcher, a really nice reliever, 22 ranked prospect on the Marlins system. Here's the way I look at this kind of deal. You could probably get more for him, but if I'm the Cubs and I'm retooling, I'm going to use the prospect depth that I have and guys who are going to be succumb to the 40-man roster crunch this offseason to go and buy pieces for the long term. And then I'm going to use the guys who are going to be on expiring deals or will be free agents at the end of this year to sell and get pieces back. The guys that we have outside of Stroman are not going to bring back a big return. Hence why Stroman is the only one bringing back a prospect in a top 10 list on a team. 2 of them, for instance. The way I view the Kyle Hendricks situation, he's been playing very well. He's got like a sub 250 ERA through 7 starts. He's not striking out guys, but he's getting the job done. The Marlins have a good enough defense to back him up, and the Cubs are not picking up that $60 million option on him next year. At this point, you're not going to get anything for him. There may be a slim chance you could re-sign him, and even if you trade him now, you can still re-sign him. He loves Chicago. He'd come back, I think. Um,
Hmm.
I would want to get something from him. I don't know what the Marlins view Sanchez is right now, and maybe they want to save Sanchez as an interesting swap for a bat. And if I'm the Cubs, I could throw a bat in this situation. If you want to move Bellinger from the Astros to the Marlins instead and give them another left-handed power bat in their outfield, do that. If you want to do like a Nick Madrigal in there to help, do that. But I think Hendricks and Merriweather to the Marlins to shore up their pitching while they go out and use their actual prospects, or could use a starter that they currently have to go and get another bat, knowing they have Hendricks coming in. I think that would work well. That's a move I would look for if I'm the Cubs. Kind of take flyers on some guys that have potential not in their current roles as they recover from injuries. We did that with Madrigal. We traded Craig Kimbrell for Madrigal when he was hurt, and it's
Right.
starting to work out well now. But I think it could be kind of the same thing here. So those are the moves I like. Here's an interesting one. If the Cardinals were to go and retool, Dylan Cease would be a target for the Cardinals. They need long-term starting pitching help. Would you do a package for him built around Carlson, Herrera, and Mason Wynn as a starting point?
I would.
I think it would take more than that, but I think that's a good starting point for that deal.
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't. There's probably not a package in the league I would consider like Walker and Wynn together, because those are kind of your two power prospects.
Right.
But uh, really wouldn't want to trade Walker. Wynn, I would consider it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Dylan Cease, and you have to obviously be hopefully working out an extension, but Dylan Cease is definitely someone I'd be interested in.
Yeah, I think that's good. Some big names, as I already said, Aroldis Chapman was traded to the Rangers from the Royals. I, as of right now, I put money on Juan Soto being moved. I think there's a team out there that would want him for the playoff stretch, and I think we see him as a pitcher hitter swap together. So like Snell plus him for a prospect package.
Sure.
Um, I do have Paul Goldschmidt being traded right now. If they trend in the direction and the Rays are a candidate for that, they need a first base upgrade. Um, I don't necessarily. I would say it's less than a 50% chance, but I'm willing to put him on this list because I think there is a good chance it happens. Um, I have Blake Snell being traded, Andrew McCutchen being traded, and then my pitcher from the Mets is Verlander. I think if there's a West Coast team, specifically the Dodgers or the Giants, or even the Diamondbacks. I mean, there was talk about Max Scherzer going back to the Diamondbacks if he's traded, where he started
Yeah.
his career. I don't know how much that would do for them this year, and it would really hinder their payroll next year. But I mean, they're willing. If the Mets are willing to pay some money down, I think the Diamondbacks have enough of a prospect cash to facilitate that deal. So I wouldn't be
I agree.
surprised.
Well, they had been rebuilding for a while. I mean, they do have the prospects for it.
Yeah. Yep, yep. Any other trade notes for you? That's all I'm at right now. I think we'll kind of ramp up more into that after the All Star break as we see more names and rumors being floated around.
Yeah, there's still unfortunately a lot of baseball that has to get played in July
Right.
before we see more of it. As much as we'd like to see these bigger names get moved in the next couple weeks, most of it's going to happen the last week of July and the first couple days of August, obviously. So, um, a huge difference between being 5 games out and 10 games out for
Yep.
teams. So, just have to see where teams are at uh, here at the end of the month.
I agree. All right, we'll round out today's episode. Just a quick overview. The position player side of the All Star game was announced for the American League and the National League. So I'm just going to go over who made it. At the catcher position, the starter is going to be Sean Murphy from the Braves for the National League and Jonah Heim from the Rangers for the American League. First base is Freddie Freeman of the Dodgers and Yandy Diaz of the Tampa Bay Rays. Runner up in the American League surprisingly was Vladdy, who did not make that. Second base, obviously, Luis Ariz from Miami and Marcus Simeon from Texas. Third base, Nolan Arenado is the starter for the National League from the Cardinals, and Josh Young from the Rangers beat out Matt Chapman for the third base starting. Shortstop, Orlando Arcia beat out Francisco Lindor for the National League, and Corey Seager handedly won the American League shortstop. He's having a great career year this year. coming back from injuries the last several. JD Martinez beat out Bryce Harper for the National League DH, and Shohei Ohtani easily won the American League DH over this quote says Brandon Belt here, so that wasn't much of a competition. The National League outfield starters are going to be Ronald Acuna Jr., Mookie Betts, and Corbin Carroll. Good for him. So happy for him what he's doing this year. He's going to be a star in this league. And then the AL outfield, which Trout shouldn't really be here. He's had kind of a down year. He's hitting 254 with 17 homers in 76 games. It's not all-star starter material there. It's Trout, Rosarena, and Judge. And Judge is actually hurt, so he won't start. It'll be one of Alvarez, Adolis Garcia, or Kevin Kiermaier to be the starters in that. And that is the recap of the All-Stars right now. We'll probably be able to talk about the pitchers next episode if we do it before the All-Star game. If not, we may do a recap after the All-Star game and kind of reassess where we're at trade deadline-wise. All right, Caleb, anything else from you?
Sounds good. I don't think so, man.
Cool.
Just got some important baseball coming up. Pay
Yes, we
attention
do.
to and see where teams end up.
Trade season is upon us, and I am here for it. I hate being on the selling side, but I love watching everything unfold. So as always, thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it, and we will see you at the next one. Peace.
See ya.